Are Clemson and Florida State joining the Big 12? You may remember a few months ago when I had Brian from Clemson Football Live on to talk about, is the ACC on the verge of collapse? A question I pitched to him almost as a joke was, is there a chance that Clemson and Florida State could go join the Big 12? And his response, which I just took as just exasperation with the state of affairs with the ACC and not as a serious answer, was that, yeah, at this point, they might as well. And to paraphrase, you'll have to go back and watch the video. It was a great discussion. Highly recommend. But to basically paraphrase, he was like, at this point, why not? Why not go join the Big 12 with how bad the ACC is? And again, I kind of chuckled. I didn't take it seriously. But this has now become a serious discussion point that Florida State and Clemson could potentially go join the ACC. Go join the Big 12 from the ACC. What kind of kicked this off was Ross Dellinger revealing that he thinks the Big 12 has had preliminary discussions with both Florida State and Clemson. And then, of course, in recent days, you've had the Big 12 media days, and Brett Yormark has leaned heavily into the Big 12's pursuit of private equity, which could potentially bring in a lot of revenue, potentially $1 billion plus worth of revenue to the conference to potentially lure in a team like Florida State or Clemson. At least that's their goal. I mean, Big 12 shoots high. They really do. For everything you can say about that conference, and there's a lot of naysayers out there, the one thing you can't say is that they do not fight for every single inch of ground that they can get. They absolutely do. They go out there and they shoot for the moon. And going down and roping and pulling down Clemson and Florida State from the skies down to the Big 12 would be a massive pull for Brett Yormark in the Big 12. Is it something that can actually take place? The legal battle is still waging in the courtrooms of North Carolina, where it is now going to stay because the judges have ruled that North Carolina is the only courts that can rule on this. But the legal battles are still waging in the courtrooms of North Carolina on whether or not Florida State and Clemson can even get out of all the binding financial deals that keep them in the ACC right now. So we don't even know if they have the opportunity without paying a massive exit fee, which would be almost cost prohibitive to any other options other than maybe the Big Ten or SEC coming down and helping them out with that exit fee. Right now, the costs are so high that unless they win that court battle, they're probably not going to be able to get out. So we still have to see how that's going to play out. But if they are, if things trend in their direction, Big 12 comes calling. Is that a place that they're going to end up? I am not the first person to make a YouTube video on this, so this is definitely a hot topic of today. But I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not at all. And I'm going to address it from a different perspective than a lot of people out there have. When we tend to look at college athletics as college football fans, as college football analysts, as lovers of the game, of lovers of college athletics, we look at it from an athletic perspective. But especially when you are dealing with ACC schools, that is the absolute opposite mindset from where you have to approach this question. These schools, ACC, they do not look at the college landscape from an athletic perspective. They don't. They look at it from an academic perspective. The ACC is basically the Pac-12. The entire ivory tower backwards mindset that killed the Pac-12 is the exact same mindset with which the ACC approaches running their conference, except that they have the benefit of East Coast bias. So they're on the East Coast, they're playing in more favorable time slots, they're in larger city spaces with larger populations, more viewership, more opportunity to bring in revenue. So they are able to survive so far. But I mean, they're the next one on the cutting block, and a lot of it has to do with the mindset with which they approach the game of college sports. But you have to look at it from an academic perspective, because the ACC schools and the ACC as a whole, I mean, they consider themselves elbow pals with the Ivy League. I mean, they're not quite at that level, but they have a lot of schools that are in the top 20 nationally, top 10 nationally for top academic programs in the country. And so they, especially with the addition of Stanford and California now, that has definitely boosted their academic score overall. But before that, they were still very, very high elite academic first level type institutions. And so when you're looking at this, you can't look at it like a YouTuber. You cannot look at it like a fan. You can't look at it like a professional analyst. You cannot look at it like a professional announcer. You can't look at it like a coach. You have to look at it like a professor and an academic elite. And what they are looking at is the academics first. And of course, it's a scale. It's not just all academics. I mean, if it was all academics, Clemson, Florida State, the rest of the ACC, they'd be in the Ivy League. So obviously, it's not just all. I mean, this isn't Harvard or Yale, that you're dealing with here. There is a focus on some other things. It's not just their academic weight, but that's a heavy factor. There are some other factors as well, which we're going to look at right now as to why the Big 12 is not an option here. So obviously, when you're looking at academics first, when you're looking at average rankings per conference, the Big Ten, their average ranking is 29.4. And obviously, that's, trending towards number one. The lower your ranking, the better overall, right? So out of all the schools in the country, their average as a conference is 29.4. They have a ton of conferences, and this is not considered, this is of FBS schools. I should clarify that. Of FBS programs, so not considering Ivy League, FCS schools, so FBS programs, their average is 29.4. So they have a bunch of the top 10, Northwestern's in there, Illinois in there, of the top 20 institutions in the FBS. The ACC is only just behind them. They've been boosted by the addition of Cal and Stanford, but they are only just behind them at 31.2. And then between the Big Ten and ACC, there is a significant drop-off to 52.1 average overall with the SEC, and then well below them, another 12-point drop-off at 64 average is the Big 12. So ACC is sitting at 31.2, Big 12 is sitting at 64. Again, they are looking at this as an academic step. So they're not looking at as athletics or money primarily. They're looking at academics, and that is a massive step down for them. The Big 12 is not an academic conference. It's one of the reasons I love the Big 12, because they actually care about football and put football first, as it should be in the modern world of college athletics. You're not going to survive as a program, as a conference, by prioritizing academics first. Academics will come with everything else, but you have to do what is best for your football program, and academics will. Well, as far as conference association goes, it doesn't matter who your conference mates are academically. If they're athletically proficient, you're going to do just fine academically by yourself. It's not going to change the grants that come in to you just because you're in a conference with, West Virginia versus being in a conference with, Cal or Stanford. That doesn't change anything for you as an academic institution in the modern day. What does make a major impact on NIL and the transfer portal and your potential to be able to go out and pursue the playoffs is who your athletic conference mates are. So that is how the Big 12 approaches things. It's great. That's not how the ACC approaches things. They are living in the past. They are living in 1990s of college football right now, and they're not coming forward. It is going to take a cataclysmic collapse like it did with the Pac-12 to finally wake themselves up, their eyes to the fact that they need to go out and pursue programs for their athletic potential, not just for their academics, like adding Cal and Stanford. I mean, that's very, very telling to how the ACC as a whole and the member institutions that have voted to accept these schools approach the college athletic field. Is they're not going out and targeting the schools like Utah that are going to come in and add to their conference strength. They're not going after that. They went after Cal and Stanford. Utah didn't want to go to the Big 12. Utah wanted to go to the ACC. That was their number one choice. They went to the Big 12 because there was nowhere else to go, and they are not happy about it. I mean, you talk to Utah fans, you talk to their social media teams. I mean, you see how their social media teams put things out. I mean, Utah is upset that they're in the Big 12, but they're going to go run through the conference right. They have no respect for the Big 12 at all right now. Utah doesn't want to be there. They wanted to be the ACC. ACC said, nah, not quite up to our academic standards. We're going to go target two absolute powerhouses in Cal and Stanford. Yeah, great additions. But again, to them, they are. Cal and Stanford are the two top academic institutions now in the ACC. It makes perfect sense if you're looking at it from the right mindset. You have to approach this you have to turn off your college football brain, and you have to approach this from an academic perspective. And then all the completely mind-blowingly stupid moves that the Pac-12 and now the ACC have made make perfect sense if you just don't look at it in the way that reality actually works. So, Obviously, there are other factors here, because if it was just purely academics, then Florida State and Clemson would be fine to stay in the ACC, because Big Ten's only a slight step up, 29.4, only a couple of points up from them there, that they would stay. So obviously there are other factors. It is still a scale. It's, like I said, not just Ivy Leagues, but that scale has academics as a heavy factor. But the other big factor here, and it's not football strength, it's money. Because again, you're looking at this as people who run academic institutions. What do they care the most about? The money that's going to be able to be poured into those academic institutions. So again, why in the world, when you're talking about college football, would football have anything to do with the discussion? As usual, in the modern game of football, the actual play on the field is the last thing in anybody's mind. The next big player in this discussion is the money. And the money is significantly different between what the ACC has now and what it could have, and hence the reason that Florida State and Clemson are making these moves to leave the conference, and other teams may potentially look to go with them. But when you're looking at money, in playoff distribution, Big Ten, SEC well ahead of ACC and Big 12, $21 million for the Big Ten and the SEC, whereas ACC and Big 12 are sitting at $13 million and $12 million respectively. However, when it comes to TV deals, this is where there is a massive spike in the financial potential at these other conferences compared to the ACC. Big Ten, $71.875 million per member. SEC, $68.75 million per member, so only a few million off of the Big Ten. ACC, $17.1 million. So $71.875 million as the top, and $17.1 million. And what may shock you, if you are completely been out of the loop on what's been going on and why Florida State wants to leave, is that $17.1 million is the bottom of the scale. The Big 12 actually is making more per member at $31.7 million. Now that $31.7 million is not enough to close the gap between the academic chasm between the ACC and the Big 12, but it just goes to show you how badly off the ACC is right now, financially speaking, in the college football landscape. So the next biggest factor is money, and so because the Big 10 and the SEC are both, Big Ten's better than the ACC academically, so they have the money and the academics. They are the perfect landing spot for an ACC-minded school like Florida State and Clemson. They would love to get into the Big Ten. That is the perfect landing spot for them. I know a lot of people talk about, like, Florida State would be awesome for the SEC. They'd love to. No, actually, Florida State, they're the people that run the institution would prefer to be in the ACC, even though it doesn't necessarily make sense geographically. That is where they would rather be, based on how they approach this system of college sports. The SEC, like I said, 20 points down, 21 points down in the rankings from the ACC, but they are making $40 million more. And actually, if you add in the playoff revenue, now you're talking $50 million plus more than what Florida State and Clemson can make in the ACC. That is enough. That is enough to clear the gap. Because again, this is a discussion when it comes to private equity that I'm not going to go too in depth on this channel, because I'm still working out all the intricacies of it as well. But it is not as sustainable and reliable as TV revenue or playoff revenue. There are a lot of hidden strings that come with private equity. It is a sticking point with a lot of schools, a lot of individuals, as something that is not entirely clear or something that is not entirely beneficial. And the last thing that blue chip programs like Clemson and Florida State like to do is to explore new waters. So they're going to go and stick with what is most easily accessible and sustainable: TV contracts, playoff contracts, things that they are familiar with, money that is guaranteed from those packages, versus a private equity structure, which could be beneficial, but also comes with a lot of hidden downsides and potential negative factors that they don't want to deal with. And again, while the Big 12 could potentially close that gap with a private equity infusion, $1 billion plus, they're probably not going to get so much that they would be significantly outcompeting the Big Ten and the SEC. They might be able to top what those schools can offer per member, but it would not be significantly more. And with, again, the academic standing right off the bat, because between the two, because again, Big 12 is not even in the same discussion as the Big 10, and they are not very close at all to the SEC. SEC at least is still top 50 average overall. Big 12, you're now dropping into sub 60s. So it's twice what the ACC is averaging right now. That's not what they're going to want to pursue overall. So even if you were able to equal it, it would be with private equity, which again is something that we're not going to delve deeply into it because I am not an expert on it, but I have read enough of the drawbacks and some of the faltering, some of the feet dragging when it comes to private equity to know that it is murky enough waters that you would need to have significantly more private equity funded money coming in to compete with the guaranteed TV contracts and playoff money to be able to compete with that structure. You would need to have significantly higher levels. And I don't think that private equity splitting amongst Big 12 members is going to be able to equal high enough average numbers overall to be able to top the guaranteed, safe, traditional methods along with the academic success of the Big 10 and SEC. And then, of course, the final factor, football. It is still a significant drop-off going to the Big 12 compared to the SEC and the Big 10. I love the Big 12. I love Big 12 football. I do. It's very exciting to watch. However, it's not in the same ballpark. It is not in the same ballpark, at least right now. Give them 4 or 6 years, see what happens, see if they can maintain their current membership, add some people, and they might be able to do some things. But right now, they are not in the same ballpark as the SEC and the Big 10. They're just not. And that is clearly identified by the playoff structure and clearly identified by who has the upper hand in the marketing right now. I mean, the TV networks recognize the fact that the Big 12 and the SEC, the Big 10 and the SEC are in a completely different strata right now because they're close enough to be able to break off on their own separate division of college football that they were able to strong arm every other team into giving them twice what the second highest making conference is making out of the playoffs. That shows you where the balance of power is football-wise. They have the markets. They have the on-field production. They are expecting to have a bigger cut of the playoffs because they're expecting to produce more playoff teams. And so the markets are indicating that the power is in the court of the Big 10 and the SEC. And so the Big 12 doesn't have the football chops to be able to compete against the Big 10 and SEC when it comes to vying for Clemson and Florida State. They don't have the academic chops to be able to go up against those institutions. And they don't have the safe, guaranteed economic standing to be able to compete with them either. So could Florida State and Clemson end up in the Big 12? Well, the only way that I could see that possibly happening is if Clemson and Florida State won their lawsuits, were able to get out of the ACC, and then the Big 10 and SEC said, nah, we don't want you, which I really seriously doubt would happen, at least with one of those schools. I would think they would want to go for both of them, maybe make a sweep for some more ACC schools in general, but I seriously doubt that would happen. If in that realm of possibility it did happen, and there was nowhere else to turn, in that case, Big 12, especially if you get out without having to pay a massive exiting fee, Big 12 is making more money than you already in TV deals. It would make sense to go there. But it is a absolute last resort, not going to happen. So why is Florida State and Clemson talking to the Big 12 supposedly? And it's not been confirmed. Again, this is a reporter saying he thinks that they have talked to them. So if that's the case, why are they talking to them? Well, why wouldn't you? You explore all your options, know what's out there, but more than anything, put pressure. It puts you in a better bidding position, a little bit of a better position when you're at the bargaining table. So you put pressure on the ACC, and you also potentially put pressure on the SEC and Big 10 because neither conference has spoken up and said, hey, we are going after Clemson and Florida State. And there might be some legal reasons they can't go into that. But neither of those conferences have made any clear indications that they are targeting either of these schools. All of the we want to go join another conference is coming from the Florida State and Clemson side of things. So this puts some pressure on them. I mean, I don't think it's that good of a bluff because I don't think anybody's buying it. But it does put a little bit of pressure on the Big 10 and SEC to say, hey, why don't you make your minds? Because if neither of you come knocking, we have other options that we will potentially pursue. And so I think at the end of the day, it's a bargaining move. Why not just have the conversations? Nobody signed anything. Nobody said they're going to go into a deal here. They're just talking. So why wouldn't you have those discussions? I would assume that athletic departments and conference heads are talking all the time about these potential things. Even when conference realignment is stable, I'm assuming those conversations, at least on an undertone state in a more informal setting, are still going on. So yes, the rumors, SEC or Big 12 going after Florida State and Clemson, will it come true? I sincerely doubt it. I would say that as far as percentages go, it is high enough in my mind to say it is a clear and obvious no. But conference realignment landscape is crazy. Who would have thought that Cal and Stanford would be in the ACC? So who knows at the end of the day what will happen here? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Again, I apologize for not being an expert on private equity. I have done some research into it, but it is a complicated field that a lot of people have a lot of questions about, and I am not in depth in my financial background enough to be able to, I think, clearly break it out right now. If it is something that comes to fruition, the Big 12 does use to go and pursue, I promise I will double my efforts to make sure that I can fully understand it. But as it stands right now, just the fact that there are questions out there, that there are enough other people that are also saying this doesn't sound like the sure thing that maybe some other financial sources are, is enough to say, combined with other factors, that would be a sticking point that could, in a situation that's already not going favorably for the Big 12, be another factor that pushes the Florida States and Clemsons of the world away from them. So thanks again for watching all the way to the end. Make sure you like and subscribe. And again, I want to hear your thoughts. And I'm sure there's lots of thoughts on this topic. I love talking about it when I have something that I think is relevant to say. I don't just like to come out and do a conference realignment video every day or anything like that. But when there is movement in the waters, you can be sure that I'll be coming out and talking about those factors and giving at least my take on it. I want to hear yours in the comments, and I promise that I'll get in there and have those discussions with you as well. So thanks so much for watching all the way in. Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always on this channel, go Big Blue!